You are listening to another AlwaysMoto production. So you picked up a new bike. Where do you start with the adjustments and setup? What parts should you get for it? What about your riding gear? Which gear do you actually need? Don't stress, the AlwaysMoto Inspected podcast starts now. Welcome to the AlwaysMoto podcast episode 30. This is an interview that we recorded with Marco Yukota, the CEO and co-founder of Flux Performance Motorcycles. We have had a little delay in this one. Unfortunately, we tried to record this a couple of months ago before my injury. I had some technical difficulties. I had some technical difficulties in terms of the recording. We lost, for some reason, Marco's microphone didn't pick up in our recording at the time, and we only had one side of the interview, which really sucked, and it was disappointing. We had some good content there, but we've managed to get back together post my injury, and we've been able to talk through where Flux Performance is up to in terms of their production of their new motorcycle they call the Primo, which is their pre-production version. Marco's got some awesome information here about the electric bike technology, the movement, what their Flux is all about, what they're trying to do with their specific bike, and some of the componentries, with a lot of battery talk in this, obviously. But Marco has a great interview here. We've got about 2 hours of content here, and we cover a hell of a lot of stuff. It's worth listening to. And for those of you that want to find out more about the Flux Moto, the performance motorcycle, go over to their website. It's fluxmoto.co. You can sign up to have a test ride of the bike. You can also sign up to put down a pre-purchase. So you put down a deposit of €50 to be on their list, to be one of the first to have one of these Flux Performance motorcycles when they're ready in about 18 months to 2 years, but it's also then you're showing your support for the Flux guys to get through this initial production phase or creation phase that they're going through. And by the sounds of it, they're doing quite well. They're very close to actually riding this bike for the first time. It's just sitting there in the garage by the sounds of it, just waiting for a couple of electronic updates to come through so that it's all connected, and then they're good to go. So I expect to see some little snippets and stuff starting to come out from these guys about where they're up to in the next few weeks, and hopefully it'll create some more buzz. But ideally, we want to be signing up to their test ride and to putting pre-purchases in place for them, and they're looking for test ride locations. So that's part of their sign up process. So they want to know where the people are the bulk of people are from. So if we can get a lot of Aussies signing up, it'll be fantastic because they might actually come out and do it here. I doubt it, but look, it's something worthwhile. If they've got a lot of interest from the Australian market, that will help things for us getting them out here as well. But look, ideally, this is just a look into the future for everybody. Electric motorcycles are coming. We've had that Stark introduction, and you can listen to that episode from us here on the AlwaysMoto podcast about the Stark Varg introduction. And this is the steps just before that. Ideally, sometime next year, we might actually be heading over to Flux Performance in Slovenia to go for a ride on their bike. We'll have to wait and see, but check out this interview. Marco's a great interview. He's got a lot of information and passion for the sport. He's a long-time moto rider, and look, we just can't wait to see this Flux Moto actually come to life and actually see some images and some videos of it in the very near future. So check out this interview. It's coming up right now. All right, guys and girls, now on the AlwaysMoto podcast, another interesting interview for you guys to listen to and get some insight into some of the future things that are coming to the world of motorcycling. We tried to do this a couple of months back, had a couple of technical issues, which I can't believe stuffed up somehow, but they did. But we've got him back on the line to go through it all again, and hopefully with some updated information about where the company's up to and where this bike might be getting seen at next or first. So we've got on the line from Flux Performance Motorcycles. It's the CEO and co-founder, Marco Yokota. How you doing, Marco?
Hi, I'm doing great.
That's
Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
No, I appreciate the time and the double time. As I said in the introduction there, we've done this previously. We had a stuff up on my end, and I apologize for that. But hopefully today we're cooking with gas and we can get it done properly.
Yeah, let's say it was general practice the first time around, and now will be much better.
Exactly. Let's go with that. Yep, definitely. All right. Well, let's jump straight into it. Who is Flux Performance Motorcycles?
Yeah, we're a startup from Slovenia in Europe. For those who maybe don't know where that is, it's the country of Krapovic Exhaust Systems and Tim Geiser, the world champion motocross guy, and also Trump's wife. But we don't kind of
Don't want to admit that too
put that
often.
out too much. Yeah, exactly. It's not one of our best exports, let's say, but yeah. Um, so we're a team of 4 people currently. So it's me and my 3 other co-founders, and yeah, we're basically just chipping away at the first prototype.
Nice. Okay. And I thought of this one after we'd spoken last time, but the name Flux and Flux Performance, that didn't have anything to do with obviously this being an electric bike and being futuristic. That didn't come from like Back to the Future with a flux capacitor or anything here, did it? Where'd the name come from?
Well, it kind of it did. So to be honest, we were looking at something that doesn't really say electric,
Yep.
because we are kind of tired of the whole narrative of electric, electric, electric all the time.
Yep.
And we wanted something that kind of sounds cool, but it's still referring to the electric drive in a non-direct way.
Yep.
So Flux came as an idea. And then in physics, basically, flux is the vector showing the direction of a medium through a plane. So basically,
Ah.
we're saying that we are showing the direction of performance with our work.
Very cool. Okay, yeah. So yeah, it does sort of have a little bit of a reference there. No, I figured the Flux was definitely the electric side of things, and it's interesting that you say that you're trying to move away from being like that, like labeled electric motorcycles. I guess in time we just want this to be known as a motorcycle or a bike that you're riding. It doesn't have to be electric or 4-stroke or 2-stroke anymore. It's just a bike you're going out. So that's yeah, you're obviously trying to get away from that
Yeah,
stigmatism.
that's a big thing actually. I think it's a used up trope. I mean, I still personally believe that we need to make some big changes for the climate, but fear mongering and kind of forcing people against their will into it, I
Yep.
don't think is a thing that works. And I think we pushed it as far as it can go. And now it's actually being pushed from the other side. So we're getting the negative effect. So I'm trying to put that all aside, and it's up to us, to develop the tech that will make the environmental choice the easy choice. So you're not saying, okay, I need to make a sacrifice for the planet. So instead of working my ass off all week, I'm going to buy an expensive bike that doesn't really go very fast because it's electric.
Mm.
I'm saying now you don't need to choose between mean and green. Now you can have it all with the Flux motorcycle.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that you're trying to get away from that a bit, so that you can just blend into the background and be another option for you to ride. So nice. So with
Yeah.
the company, like, how do you get this going? Like, at what point do you sit down and go, I'm going to make a motorcycle and I'm going to put this into some sort of mass production and completely
Yeah.
change the focus of how this actually happens? Like, it's not just a combustion engine anymore. You're going, let's go futuristic and were you just sitting at the pub having a beer and going, geez, this sounds like a great idea with a couple of mates, and they all go, yeah, 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 and they egg you on, and next thing you know, you're in the garage with a soldering iron, or what's happening there?
Well, Not really. This is a thing that has been kind of gnawing at me the last, I think, 12 years now. Actually, when I started riding motorcycles kind of late,
Yep.
and I didn't have family support, so I kind of had to do all my racing program myself. So I knew firsthand of how difficult it is, and especially how difficult it is for a person who's not, let's say, in the loop, an external person to come into it. With all the maintenance, the expenses, the noise problems. And basically, already in high school, I was excited about the electric propulsion basically solving all of these problems.
Mm-hmm.
And then in university, when I was studying engineering, we set up a little team and made a prototype supermoto bike. It was low power because that was the only feasible thing at the time.
Yep.
And we kind of played around with it. We got some awards, but realistically, the battery tech was just not there yet. So now 10 years have passed. The battery prices have gone down 90%, and the capacity has gone up 3 times, so 300%.
Wow.
So
Yep.
big changes with the automobile industry revolution going. And yeah, so first I was frustrated with all of the bikes that are out there. I think most of the electric bikes suck, to put it bluntly. I was really yeah, no PC from me, unfortunately. So I was really excited about Alta.
Yep.
They were, in my opinion, the first company that really gets it and that really made a great and compelling product. And also, what they did that was incredible was actually put it to mass production and produce it reliably, as you can see with all the bikes that are still running around. So they were a huge thing, and then they closed in 2018.
Yeah, they disappeared pretty
And
quick
I
at that
was
point, didn't they?
yeah, it was kind of all swept under the rug, and everybody was under NDAs.
Yep.
So then again, there was this huge hole in the market. um, Used Altas were being sold for more money than what they were costing new, which meant that people were really excited about them but couldn't get them.
Yep.
And then basically from my regular engineering work, I met up with my co-founders doing other projects, and I recognized their talent, and their background is aerospace. They're basically developing electric aircraft, VTOLs, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a ton of experience in electric propulsion, especially aircraft have the same problems as motorcycles. The weight and the size
Yep.
is always a problem with
Yep.
aircraft.
Yeah. Can't be carrying
So
anything
they have
extra
the
there.
solutions. Exactly. So they have already a lot of solutions and thought going into mitigating that. So we kind of got to talking because of my whole background from university, and we put down some numbers, and it kind of seemed feasible. And then I went in to analyze some of my data from various tracks, and we put it into some more concrete numbers. And we said, "Wow, this is feasible. We could actually make something happen that would be and and satisfy the need of the customer, so to say." And nobody seemed to be doing anything. So we kind of set up the company out of the bat,
Yep.
and here we are today.
So those three partners that you're talking about there, have they got any like background interest in motorcycling? Do they ride? Did they ride? Or they just
So
that the
one of
skill set?
them, yeah. So one of them does. One of them also did some amateur racing. He's a mechanic, and his main experience is in vehicle homologation.
Yep.
The guys from aerospace, no, they don't basically know anything about motorcycles, but they know everything about electric propulsion.
Okay, all right.
So it's it's a
Have
really
they
good
got on a
mix, I
bike then
think.
since? Like they're now developing a motorcycle. Have they got an interest in the two wheels yet or not?
Yeah, now they got the bug. They tried a couple of my bikes, and they got excited. They did their driver's license now and are looking to do something. One of them bought a little dirt bike for his kid, so yeah, they're infected.
Yeah, nice. It doesn't take long, but I'm just wondering if they did actually get to that point or not. Sometimes people are just completely immune. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no. It's hard to resist.
definitely, definitely. So at this point, like obviously you're saying like it was just a timing thing for you guys. You saw the hole in the market, Ultra had disappeared. You
Mm,
obviously didn't know about other brands that started to pop out at that same sort of time, like as in the Stark, that's now
mhm, mhm,
probably a tiny bit in front of you guys in that process. But
mhm.
like, why now? Like, is it just purely the tech is available? Is that where you're at, sort of thing, that it's feasible? Like you said, your math sort of added up in terms of it would be the consumer would get some value from it. Is that why now is the time?
Yeah, now is, in my opinion, is a historic opportunity even because now the tech, thanks to the car electric revolution, is just starting to be feasible. It's not like you can go out and buy solutions, put them on a bike, and go. You still have to be really, really good to make something like a competitive dirt bike.
Mm-hmm.
But it's physically possible. You can get the battery cells that can get the job done, so to say. And having said that, the big guys like the KTM's, the Japanese manufacturers, they aren't yet doing anything in this space. So I think it's really a unique opportunity in history for startups to kind of get through this little door opening and jam their foot there and get a footing down and expand.
Definitely, yeah. I see it as a chance for you guys to be in front of those, the brands you mentioned, like the Yamahas, the Kawasaki's, to be in front of them and be an existing
Yep,
electric option for the consumer to not then steer away from when the other ones come out. Like you can be there beforehand. You have a history of being produced and hopefully reliable and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, you could be in front of those guys at this time,
exactly.
which would be nice. They're big corporations. It's hard to get in front of them and that sort of things.
Yeah, in one, I mean, in the financial standpoint, yeah, they have all the funds in the world, right? But in the speed and agility standpoint, I mean, those guys are really, really slow to adapt
Yeah.
for regular stuff. I mean, just look at how many years Honda took to just put a hydraulic clutch on the bike. Um, and if you think about what motorcycle manufacturers are, they are mainly motor manufacturers. They don't do basically much more of the vehicle aside from the motor and the chassis. So take away the motor, you're taking away 80% of the company, the infrastructure, the know-how, the patents, the
Hmm.
supply chains,
Yep. Yep.
So for them, it's a huge, huge, huge turnaround to go into electric. So I presume they will be resisting for as long as possible. And maybe when they do come around, it could be just easier maybe to partner with an existing company that is already doing something in the space than to completely overhaul your company like Porsche did with Rimac cars, for
Yeah,
example.
true. Because obviously you're talking about like they've got an existing warehouse with a production line where X goes into Z and Y and all that sort of stuff from the combustion side of things, and they'd have to set up a whole new production line, a whole new factory to get that stuff done, and that's a whole nother expense. And like you said, to take over an existing thing might be an easier option for them when it comes time. So yeah, it's interesting to see where
Mhm.
that side of things could get to. But it's for me, it's exciting to see a small group of guys just taking the plunge and trying to do something like this. Like to build a motorcycle sounds insane, but it's obviously possible. But I'm assuming you guys are running into a whole bunch of different supply requirements that you probably never even thought of to begin with.
Yeah, I mean it's a wild ride. So we started off by partnering with certain companies that I won't name that
Mm-hmm.
then just proved to be completely unreliable and not produce results up to our standards. So we kind of had to do some things completely from the start ourselves.
Yep.
Um, then for the electronic stuff, it's not such a problem because the know-how that we actually have in the team. So
Okay.
we aren't most companies, they rent an external company, they buy the solution, make the motor, make the inverter and
Mm-hmm.
such. But for us, we're actually every circuit board on the motorcycle is our proprietary design. So every circuit was designed by our guys, programmed by our guys, firmware designed by our guys, and
Yeah.
that makes it much easier to control everything. It makes it easier to make the right decisions when you bump into a problem, and it makes it easier to mitigate supply chain issues because especially on the electronic side, on the chip side, there's a global chip shortage.
Yep.
So if you have an outside contractor, let's say he designs a battery management system for you,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the chips isn't available. What you gonna do? They don't care. They're not gonna
Yeah.
change the program for you, or you're gonna have to wait in line to be,
Yeah.
handled and changes. And by that time, maybe the market has changed completely.
Yeah, you're vulnerable to outside
What?
influences at that point, aren't you? So it's not you're
Yeah.
not in control of your own destiny, which is difficult to get something
Yes.
going, especially now. Like,
You're not. I mean, you're always not in control of your own destiny, but you're not flexible and agile to adapt to changes. That's what
yeah,
I would say.
yeah, that's well put,
So we
actually.
were able to, yeah, so we were able to, let's say this chip isn't available. Okay, we need another chip, change the firmware and change the BMS structure and work around it.
Mm.
There are obviously delays still there, but it's not a 5-month delay that would be.
Yeah.
In other scenarios, it's a 1-month delay.
Yeah, nice. Okay. All right. So at the start of all this, obviously, most businesses, they lay out what they want to be in, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, all that sort of stuff. What's the goal for
Yeah.
Flux? Like, where do you see yourself in like 5 years or 10 years? Is this a thing that's competing with, the or overtaken the Yamahas of the world, or where do you see this in the future for you guys? What's the goal?
KTM of electric motorcycles.
Nice. Okay. And that's pretty impressive because KTM's pretty damn big at the moment. So
Yeah, but I think that's the easiest way to explain it. We're not intending to go into sport bikes anytime soon.
hmm
I think off-road will be a big anchor point for quite some time because of the battery technology. With the sport bike, I mean, to make a sport bike driven by electricity competitive, it's going to have to weigh 300 kilos,
ouch.
and you're not going to go very far with it. And it doesn't mesh with our ethos on making the better bike, period.
Okay. Yep.
But not in off-road, the power the average power you're actually using is quite a bit lower. So it's feasible, and I think there's a lot of space in the whole off-road market to kind of expand to other models and maybe have some urban models also.
hmm
But yeah, that's the general idea.
And I gather that sits with where your background in motorcycling comes from too. Like you're an off-road dirt rider, so you probably focus more into that range as well because that's something you're probably comfortable with and understand, I gather.
Yeah, that's my immediate group. I mean, my background is supermoto racing, but I ride mostly motocross these days.
hmm
So it's a space where I'm most comfortable in, where I understand the customer the best.
Yep.
and where I also believe that there is the most immediate value proposition in electric
Okay.
from all segments.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's obviously because there's nothing really there in that market space at this point in time, yeah?
Yeah, and because of the actual pain points, there is no other segment that suffers so much from noise and maintenance costs than off-road, I believe. I mean, motocross, enduro, and supermoto.
Yeah, definitely on the that's definitely an aspect. Like obviously the noise one, we have tracks shut down all the time, it's particularly the motocross tracks. But two, then that maintenance side of things, yeah, you're not long between an oil change. If in a dry season, you're very much having air filters, every other ride or every ride. Tires and all that sort of stuff go through. There's a lot to go with it. Pistons and oil filters, all that sort of stuff get done quite frequently in that space. And in lots of cases for the off road rider, not so much the motocrosser, but like you might be doing those in work periods or something in an event or quite regularly. So yeah, there's a lot self taught mechanics there. So
Yeah, and you're basically almost 1 hour of mechanic work for 2 hours of riding. It's quite extreme. As you said, the noise is a problem, yeah, for motocross tracks, but also for trails, because if where I live here, if I go ride with my motorcycle in the woods, I mean, I'm going to do that once or twice, and the third time I'm going to have the SWAT team waiting for me with machine gun
nice.
because the neighbors are going yeah, because the neighbors are going to call them because they're bothered, of course, by noise.
Yeah.
If you are a stealthy, silent operator and you can kind of fly under the radar, the freedom just becomes so much bigger. And isn't that almost the point of why we ride motorcycles?
Well, yeah, that freedom feeling is definitely the most exciting part of all this. And if nobody's there to stop you, then yeah, even more so. So definitely, yeah, it's hopefully something that can allow us to be, using more of those trail spaces and stuff that we probably haven't been into for years and years. So yeah, that'd be a big part of all this. So let's
and also if I can just remark also for expansion, off-road is a big market, but to be fair, most people don't know we exist, right? And that's a problem for sponsors. That's a problem for getting basically new people in. And the problem is the barrier to entry is so high because you basically need to be a mechanic and you need to understand a lot of things, and you might take them for granted if you are kind of born into it or if you have a lot of friends that do it. But I can tell you from my point of view, from a kid growing up in the city, it's a huge barrier to entry. So if you have a bike that you just push a button, twist the throttle, and you're riding, and it's really easy to maintain and it's really intuitive to ride, there are so many new people that can come into the sport and really make it grow. And if the sport grows, there are going to be a lot more sponsors for racers, so you don't have kids risking their lives for peanuts on the weekends.
Yeah, that would be nice because that's a massive aspect of what our sport goes through, isn't it? They're all out there, getting injured, and there's not much financial gain on any of this for the majority of the field, let's say. So, and you're right. The people trying to get into our sport, you generally are born into it, as in your dad rode. Or your uncle rides or something along those lines. You're not going to just all of a sudden stumble across it, especially like you mentioned, you grew up in the city. You can't find a track in the city, so you're not going to just walk past one day and be like, "Oh, look at that! That looks cool. I want to try that." That's not happening. You've got to go and find it. So yeah, you have to be born into it to sort of become a motorcycle enthusiast, don't you?
Yeah, exactly, and that's a huge problem, and it can be solved, in my opinion, with electric bikes.
I think it would help a lot because you could literally plonk a track pretty much anywhere, and then, like we said, you could stumble across it and become an enthusiast of at least watching it, and then if the bike, like you said, is simple to ride and intuitive, well, then it's going to become more like just learning to ride a push bike, probably even easier because you don't have to worry about the balance while your legs are going around and around. People would actually try it and enjoy it and, become more involved in
I
it.
think so. There can be a whole market of people just, having an off-road bike and going for a nice, easy trail ride in nature, or when they go camping, for example, they want a bike that doesn't make noise, that doesn't pollute, and that can fit right in there. And all of those people are going to be buying then aftermarket parts. All of those people are consequently going to be interested at least somewhat in the sport and might be then followers of the sport. Just look at bicycles, at how huge that market has become from basically being nothing 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, and like how much it's exploded with the e-bike movement, that they're all,
Yeah.
the overweight people are now getting onto an e-bike because all of a sudden it's easy to cycle. And then they're realizing the massive benefits and the outdoors and finding all these new places to go and meeting new people. So yeah, it's that e-bike thing, especially in the last few years, has really gone nuts in the cycling industry. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's all new people in the market. It's all more units sold.
Mm-hmm.
And that means more sponsors for racers. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, definitely. No, it sounds wonderful. It's just a matter of we got to get past this initial movement of getting them into the market, and then I think the rest will fall into place. But it's just we got to need another 3 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So
Well, the trend is there.
exactly, yeah. So like you sort of mentioned there, like obviously those things are in terms of going around with the bike, like you mentioned, going into the forest and going for rides and getting these new groups of people into them. Obviously, they're not going to be, to start with, at least, into the sort of the racing side of things. But for your bike that you've put out these these prototype images of on the website and stuff. You've got like the motocross looking version, you've got like the enduro looking version with the headlight and tail light side of things. What is the intention for these two models for you? Is like that motocross bike a race bike, or is it sort of like a almost race bike, as in it's more of just for the the third tier sort of guy to go out and enjoy his racing and riding on, but not necessarily performance racing at the highest level? Or where is these bikes intended for in this initial push out for you guys?
Yeah, no, they are placed right on top with a massive focus on performance.
Okay.
They have to be better in every way than all the gas competitors, and we are aiming with everything to basically push out the last grams of performance possible. I mentioned new people coming into it,
Mm-hmm.
but if we take just KTM for the example, they are always pushing to be the best, obviously.
Yeah.
And also the weekend rider that goes out and spends his money, he wants to buy the best product. He doesn't want to buy something, whatever. He's probably worked his ass off to earn that money, and he wants to spend it on something that is the best. And that's what we want to be.
Okay, because I look at some of these existing electric bikes in the market, and they look so weird. They're not necessarily up to scratch on some of the other componentry. Like you look at the suspension and you're like, what is this? Like I've never seen this before. Like where did this come from? Like at least when you talk like a KTM brand, you're looking at like XL rims and you've got WP suspension, or like the Shercos and stuff have got KYB suspension. So at least they're brand names you've heard of when you look at the motorcycle. These ones that exist at the moment, they're just, I hate to say the word, but like that China crap sided looking thing where you're like, what is this? Where did it come from? Hopefully that's obviously not what you're going for in this instance.
No, not at all. We're going for the best components, as you can see in the pictures. We have the KYB forks on there. We have Brembo brakes. For the shock, we're going to be first trying out the Öhlins shock, but we also have KYB in the strategy for testing to see which one will basically be better for the production motorcycle. And I mean, don't get me started on what's out there, because I just become like an old grumpy man. But I'm 32 years old, so it's not so
not
healthy.
Impressed with the current
But
offerings, obviously.
I'm just gonna say it. It's stupid, really. Some things I see out there are just plain stupid. Because if you look at an electric motorcycle, I mean, the bill of materials, most of the cost is the battery, and what remains is the electronics, the inverter, and the motor. Right. The rest of the bike doesn't really cost that much money. So why would somebody then take some really crappy suspension, which is, we all know that suspension is one of the most important things on the motorcycle, if not the most important. Why are you gonna save €100 and put some crappy suspension on there? It just doesn't make any sense to me. But it makes sense because people designing those are usually either economists or electricians, or basically people that don't know motorcycles.
Yeah, they're not that enthusiast level that's been on them for years and understands what a bike should feel like and how crappy components can just make the ride so unenjoyable. So
yeah, exactly.
So, all right, those parts then, we sort of touched into that with the different components that you mentioned, and you've got a good list there of like well-known, well-established brands for those sorts of things. But talk to us about what you're trying to do with the frame, with like triple clamps, with like motor and swing arm, because I gather all those things are going to be things that you guys have to be in control of the design of, to make those main parts of the bike, and obviously then you can bolt on the Brembo brakes or the KYB suspension. Like, so those main sections. What's the things that you're doing, or are you developing those, or have you brought something in to work off for a frame? Like, have you got a previous model of something and you've bought the frame design and that's what you're working on for this starting point, or how's this working for you guys at this stage?
Yeah, so to put it in perspective, the first prototype, the Primo, is not going to be the production motorcycle. The production motorcycle will be redesigned from the ground up using knowledge that we gain from the Primo.
Sure.
So basically, the chassis on the Primo is let's call it a classic aluminum frame chassis. We are working with an Italian partner that supplies us some building blocks for that, and we basically combine them in our own way and make some changes, and the whole rear end we designed ourselves. And that I would suppose that cyclistically it would be most like a CRF.
Okay.
Honda.
Yeah, right.
So
okay.
That will be our starting point. And then then we basically have to gather a lot of data and do a lot of testing and move ahead for the production model.
And basically redesign the whole frame from that point onwards, from what you're saying.
Yeah. Because here we had to make some basically sacrifices that were just because of what was available. Because in our case, we didn't start with several million in the bank like like Stark did.
Yeah, that was pretty obvious when we went to that introduction for them, that they obviously had a decent starting point from a financial aspect, So if you guys are starting just the four of you, I'm assuming it's not, there's no massive trust fund behind you to kick this off. So yeah, it might be a bit of a different approach at this point.
Yeah, we're a grassroots movement, so to say. It's basically our own savings thrown into this, and we're gonna have a round of financing in fall this year, so coming up really, really soon.
Yeah, nice.
But yeah, anyway, returning to the thing, yeah, it has some compromises.
Yep.
But what we were really striving to do is to make the battery swappable, because a lot of people have expressed the desire to have that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So we made that happen, even being constrained with the let's say classic chassis.
Yeah,
And
right.
also another point is that we have the most battery capacity with 6.7 kilowatt hours crammed into there.
Yep.
And we use a proprietary cell to pack architecture, where basically the battery pack is hinging on the structure of the cells themselves to give it rigidity.
Okay.
And in that way, we can achieve the highest energy density, so how many capacity per kilograms you can achieve, without having to use exotic materials like carbon fiber, magnesium, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's an aluminum casing.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So just jump back 2 seconds for the dummies in the room. 6.7 kilowatt hours in layman's
Yeah.
terms. What are we talking about with that number? Is that the power? Is that
Well,
the overall duration it will run for?
oh yeah, no, that's the capacity.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the capacity of the battery. So what that means in real life, that is the hot topic right now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, how long do these things
So,
last? And yeah, is usually the comment with these things. So yes, that's why I thought we'd jump back to
yeah,
that one
yeah.
specifically.
And it's a contentious topic, because no one knows yet. Obviously, you had a chance to try, and you didn't get a chance to answer that question. We are taking another approach. We are saying we're not going to make any silly, unfounded marketing promises for the
Mm-hmm.
range.
Yep.
We are just saying right now, we don't know. All we can say is we have the biggest battery capacity. What that will entail in real usage, we're gonna test with the people. So basically, the people are going to give us use cases, and from that data, we're going to have realistic ranges for motocross, for enduro, for all different types of riding. So then, when we come out with a production bike and we make a claim for the range, it's a real range, and hopefully by that time we will have established trust with the customer, because that's another thing that really grinds my gears, is that most new electric motorcycles that are announced, they get some ridiculous range claim that is nowhere near reality. And obviously then when it comes to market, people are really let down, and we don't want to do that. I think being honest to the customer is paramount for our strategy.
Well, that's just trust in the brand, isn't it? At that point, you're trying to develop that trust. It being a new product, you need to have people understand and believe in you. And yeah, if you claim something and then the first time they get on it, it definitely doesn't work that way. They're going to just go, well, this is not true. And what else is lied on about this thing? So yeah, you sort of want to have that upfront conversation, don't you? But
Yeah,
I guess like that battery
yeah, and
bit is.
also realistically, range is going to be the biggest problem to solve. That's why with this bike we went with a swappable pack, because that's one possible way to solve it. Because we know with the Alta, we know the riding is amazing, aside from some issues like being front heavy and suspension.
Yeah.
But we know in itself riding an electric dirt bike is amazing, but the biggest problem that people had was range.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the biggest problem going forward, and that's something that we have to solve.
But on that range conversation, like and even on a petrol powered, gas powered, however you want to say it, from which continent side, but everyone's range is different, even with a tank of fuel. Like lots of people will ride the bike in very different ways, whether they're high in the revs or whether they're they're low in the revs and using a higher gear, so that you're lugging the bike, or you're revving the crap out of it and going nowhere in a low gear, and that affects how much fuel is poured through the injector or through the carby. That conversation has been there for years. I don't understand why having a battery now changes that and like, oh, I can't ride as far. Well, it's the same as it used to be. It's just now in a different form. How much you twist the throttle depends on how far you go.
Yeah, but it does bring about practical implications, because with a gas bike you can just fill it up and you go along your merry way. Whereas with the electric bike, the charge time is again another thing
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah,
consider,
true.
and also the availability of electricity is a thing to consider. But as you correctly say, it really varies widely. So a good measure would be to have a liter of gasoline equivalent. So basically, what other brands did very cleverly was say it's equal to a full tank of gas. So you kind of are able to gauge what that means for you personally, for your use. Then if that if that comparison proves to be true or not in real life, I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah, well, that's the wait and see point, isn't it? And get a few data numbers on the board after multiple people have tried it. So yeah, but jump back in there too, because the one thing that I picked up that's different from that Stark model that we got to do the test with is that changeable battery aspect. And like, it sounds like that's your focus, is to make it a simple, easy aspect to do. Because for these types of bikes, obviously being this electric bike, the battery is going to be probably one of the bigger components of the bike. It's not a small part. To have a second battery, it would be awesome, and obviously make the riding part easy. Like you said, you can literally just go, hopefully click on, click off, and away you go again. But how expensive is that second battery going to be to have with you? Like I'm thinking in my head that if it's sort of 30% of the bike, is it 30% of the cost of the bike that you've got to pay to have it sitting there? Or where does this, like, am I completely out with my rough, really rough math there? Is it going to be feasible to have a second or a third battery sitting on the back of the truck waiting for you to come back in and switch over?
Yeah, not so very far off. So yeah, that's the flip side of a swappable battery, is the cost of the second battery, and of course it's going to be 30 kilos. So you're not going to be able to put it in a backpack and kind of go in the woods and change it as you go.
It'd be a heavy backpack.
But it does solve a lot of the problems, like if you go ride on a track where you don't have electricity available, it solves when you have to do a quick pit change in a hare scramble style race. And then also if you're in a group or in a club, or maybe even some far down the line scenario, the track basically has other batteries available, and you just pay some kind of a little surcharge to be able to use that second battery.
I actually hadn't thought of it like that. Just have a swap hire sort of system there. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing for a club to do.
Yeah, in that scenario, it makes sense. And again, I'm really excited to get down to really testing what it all means, and obviously talking to customers and asking them to kind of try to handle it and give them kind of a lowdown of what that would mean specifically for their use cases, and then adapt to that. So basically, we are either going with a easily swappable battery, or we're going in a completely different direction that I wouldn't disclose at this time.
Yeah.
But solving range is, let's say, the paramount mission that we are on for the production bike.
Yeah, fair enough too. Yeah, no, and obviously that's the main conversation with all these batteries sorts of things. And funnily enough, I don't know if you've seen it on your side of the world with the social media things, but there was a thing doing the rounds recently where somebody came up with a charging mechanism off the back wheel of a car that they'd hooked up another pulley to put another belt onto, to basically then create their own generator on the back of the thing to charge the batteries as they drove. So it's sort of the things that have been just sort of showing up on the internet lately about how they're solving some of these life of like the range issues. It's amusing, but it's obviously ingenuity as well. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's also a perpetuum mobile. I don't know if it translates very well, but it doesn't work is the short version of it.
Yeah, sure. Fair enough. So
it's like putting a dynamo on your wheels on your electric dirt bike, you know. The amount of energy you're getting from the wheels is less than the increased resistance you're putting on the motor, so you're always at a loss.
fair. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that aspect, like, because you're loading it, aren't you, by putting an extra thing spinning on there. It's extra load, which means more drain. So you're basically outdoing yourself at that point, aren't you?
Yeah, you just have to always think that energy is constant and you can't create energy from nothing. So when you are creating some energy from any sort of gimmick that you think of, think about where that energy is coming from and where you are expending it in order to get that energy.
Yeah.
So that helps answer the question.
Yeah, exactly. No, that makes complete sense. And obviously, this person that put this on there, the car that we saw, that I've seen the photo of, didn't think of that aspect. But anyway, it's interesting things that we get to see sometimes. People have some wild ideas out there. So,
yeah, well, we live in a post-truth world, don't we? So everything kind of works for internet points.
Well, yeah, exactly. You don't understand it, but it was on the internet, so it must work. So what about for you guys with the battery and stuff, and we sort of got there a little bit, but charging this battery up, like if you're going to change it over, that's one thing. That's great. That helps with, obviously riding on the one day. How are we charging this? Are we able just to plug this into a general socket at home? Are we having to do any modifications? Like I know when you get some people have got Tesla cars, they can get a specific Tesla charging point installed in their house to change the I believe it's the amps that they're then putting out through that to make it a quicker charge. What's the scenario for you guys? What have you been working on for the recharge aspect of this bike?
Yeah, so with the Primo for the charging, you're gonna need the charger. And that charger then plugs into a socket, whatever's available. We do have the hardware on the battery pack available to have a 30-minute supercharge, and we're going to be testing that. It's obviously you can't do it with a normal socket. You need a three-phase socket with enough power.
Yeah.
But the battery itself, as we designed it, should be able to handle that, and maybe even quicker. But I guess we're just gonna have to test it and see. That's another big thing, to reduce the charging times, because that's a big practical aspect of living with an electric vehicle.
Definitely.
Yeah. So for the production model, we're aiming to have a CCS2 charger on there. What that means is you're going to be compatible with every public charger or with every electric car charging socket, because it's a global standard.
Yeah, right, nice. Now. Yep.
So that's the aim. But yeah, with the Primo, you're going to have a separate charger that you just plug in anywhere. And for the speeds, the standard charger is going to be 1 to 2 hours of charging speed, and the fast charging we're going to be testing is going to be 20 to 30 minutes.
That sounds nice. So what about the scenario where we've taken our 2 batteries that we've got with the bike, and we're out camping, and we're riding with one of them, and we've got the other one on a charge on, say, like just a little generator that you carry around with you for your normal camping purposes. How long is it going to take in that scenario? Like, obviously, the generator is only putting out a smaller amount, than your normal household outlet in a general sense. It's probably taking a bit more load from it, and unfortunately, fuel to run the generator. But that would work, wouldn't it? But it'd take longer, I gather.
Yeah, it completely depends on the power output of the generator. So yeah, the battery pack itself is going to be independently chargeable, so it doesn't need to be on the bike to be charged.
Mm-hmm.
You can charge it separately. And then for the charge speed, I mean, to get a rough estimate, you can just do the basic math. Let's say, let's. I'm sorry for the listeners to be introducing math, but bear with me.
They can get out their pad and paper and follow along at home. Yeah.
But yeah, if you have a 5 kWh capacity, let's say,
Yep.
to make it more simple, and you have a 2.5 kilowatt power source, let's say a generator,
Yep.
then you're going to be needing 2 hours, because every hour you're going to put in 2.5 kilowatt
Yep. Yep.
hours in there.
I'm sure everybody can do
And
that one.
that's
That was pretty
basically the math.
straightforward. So yeah.
Yeah, yes. And if you have 1 kilowatt generator, you're going to need 5 hours to put in 5 kilowatt hours, obviously.
Okay, but that still makes
And
sense
that's
then.
also, yeah.
Like,
And that's also a little bullshit detection kit for you when some companies make some strange claims for charging speeds.
well, yeah, people are probably going to have to start doing that sort of math more often when people talk about charging speeds to see if it actually equates or not. But but in that sense, where you're saying like the you know, if the generator had a 2.5 kilowatt output, it's their 2 hours to do your charge. That's still practical because you're probably going to ride for, hopefully, sort of the battery's going to be, you know, more than an hour of that sort of trail riding. You're going to wear yourself out by that time, and the battery, the other one that you have, would be ready to go for the afternoon ride or something like that. So that's still going to give you a hell of a lot of riding time in a weekend away sort of situation.
Yeah, and even if, let's say, one pack is good enough for you, and then you have a solar array to not have, let's say, a generator, and that is going to be much slower, obviously.
Yep.
But you can just have the other battery kind of trickle charging comfortably through the day, and then every second day you kind of change batteries if you
if you went on a longer, like a week away sort of trip, and you're away from an outlet for that whole period, so that would work too. You could actually do it off a solar trickle charger.
Yeah, and also a lot of new electric trucks like the Rivian and the Ford F-150 Lightning, now they have outlets on them.
Yep.
So basically you're going to be able to charge the bike from the truck itself. So then again, it expands your possibilities, and you're not limited so much to where you have electricity available.
Yeah, and it's funny, like obviously since I've done this Stark introduction and wrote it and sort of got some of their information, obviously people have been asking me about it, and in one particular scenario, you know, I was talking to a guy who just does sort of, you know, rocks up to the motocross track. He'll do his sort of 4 lap warm up, and then he might do a 15 or 20 minute moto, and he might do one more. Maybe he goes out for a third that's sort of, you know, 10 minutes long. So we're not even at an hour in ride time. And he's not, you know, he's not a professional level. And he's like, oh, I don't know if it'll make it. I'm like, mate, you're going to wear out before this battery does. And you should be getting these bikes. You are a perfect scenario for it, because, you know, your skills in maintenance and stuff aren't that good. This exactly works for you. Right. But people just have this stigmatism that I'll be able to outlast the battery. And I'm like, in what I've done so far and what everybody's telling us on paper, no, you're not that fit, you know? So I think the bikes are actually going to be way more capable than what most people are looking at them like.
Yeah. But of course, the big question is if the paper claims will translate to real claims.
Well, there is that. Yeah. But I'm sure that they'll be close. Yeah, they'll be close enough, right. But like they'll still have enough. Like I know the Stark was saying like that you could get through like a professional, you know, 30-minute plus 2 moto, so you're at like 45 minutes, and that's hardly anyone's riding at that level. But then they're also saying like you know, sort of up to 6 hours of trail riding. Well, the majority of people can't ride for 2 hours trail riding. Like, you know, 6 hours is a lot, really. If you're actually riding constantly for 6 hours, not many people are going to be doing that. So they're going to be covering that. And even if they say, you know, they're a little bit short on their numbers and it worked out to be 4 hours, well, that's still a hell of a lot of riding time if you did it from start to stop without actually having any breaks in the middle. So
Yeah. But I'm gonna bust your chops with math again.
Go on.
Sorry
Yep. Go.
again to
Love it.
everyone.
No. Go.
So if you have 6 kilowatt hours of capacity and you're riding for 6 hours, you basically divide the two and you get an average power consumption on the battery of 1 kilowatt. So that means you're putting out 1 kilowatt out of the battery before all the losses, before it gets to the wheel. So you're riding with an average of 1 or